Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773's Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, comedy on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today, wherever you are in this crazy world of ours. And, you know, sometimes you just look at the back of records and you reach inside those records and you try to pull cats out and then you see other names of guys and you say, you know, I know that they're iconic, but I'm not sure if I have the energy or the resources to really go and find them. And then you just hope that through divine timing, that eventually you will connect with them. And basically, I reunited after 4 years, did my first interview with Mike Mainieri in 2016, and then recently we've been kind of binging a little bit just because of coronavirus and because of the fact that the dude has just lived so many different musical lifetimes. And, you know, I couldn't help but recently notice that one of his compadres started to follow me on Facebook, and I didn't know if it was by coincidence or not, but it was somebody who I'd been looking to talk to for quite some time. And I reached out to him, and he was more than willing, and he was able to download the Facebook app, and I'm very happy that he was able to do that. Tony Levin and Honor, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, thank you, Jake. Good to be here.
I don't know if you recognize that track coming in. It's one of the first times I really got hip to you, and it was this really mercurial guitarist from Baltimore, O'Donnell Levy.
Yeah.
And you and Gad were cooking so hard on that album. I mean, it was like it was 74 pre-drum machine. And
yeah.
I guess I just wanted to ask you early on in your life if you could talk to the audience about when you learned what the ingredients were in order to create spiritual music with your bandmates.
Huh. Well, those albums, I know I played on the one called Simba, maybe two albums with O'Donnell.
No, this was Simba. Simba is the greatest. This is should be in the Hall of Fame, Jazz Hall of Fame. It's unreal, man. It's freaking greatest album ever.
Well, anyway, yeah, Steve and I did a lot of albums those years, and different kinds of albums. And I think what hasn't changed in all these years is and Steve, I can speak for him too, in it for the music. So the chance to get to play with somebody different and maybe even play a little bit of a different style than I played before was valuable to me then and still is now. Been very lucky ever since then and before then with whom I played with, and I'm always learning from the other players in the band or in the studio. Haven't done that much in studio work in the last 20 years, some, but not as much as, boy, the 70s and 80s. It was really a busy scene in New York, and a lot of exciting things happened, and yeah, it was a cool era, and thank you for bringing me back to that with this music.
You know, it's like, part of it's like, it's not, I mean, I was born in 78, so this is not about preservation. This is about promotion of how real music is made, and it's important to continue to talk to people like yourself because, you know, you grew up at a time with a lot of humanity in music, and when labels, quite frankly, they were not very much incentivized. You could walk into in Brookline, where you grew up, I think, you could walk into a Woolworths or a Five and Dime store, and you might find a Blackwood Brothers record, and then you might find an Art Blakey record in the same thing. It was, and that's what I wanted to ask you about it, because I just had this opportunity a few weeks ago to do my first interview with Chuck Israels, and he basically grew up in a communist family, but he was singing with Pete Seeger at 10 years old, and eventually 8 years later was playing on a John Coltrane record. And, you know, and Nat Hentoff was writing liner notes for Bob Dylan's Highway 1 and all of Mingus's albums on Columbia. Mm-hmm. And this is the incubator that you came up in, and I'm trying to figure out, And like I asked you that question about, yeah, I brought you back with the Simba thing. That's just real raw, cool, danceable groove music. I don't even know. I'm just talking about when you first felt there's only two letters that separate magic and music, and I just wanted you to talk about when you really first experienced the magic of playing with other people.
Wow, that's a good point and sort of a good question. I think I certainly didn't think about it in as much depth as you have and as you speak about it
You've been
because I
too
was a
busy
kid.
playing. No, I mean that's
Yeah,
So yeah, now's your time to think. So go ahead.
yeah. When I was a kid, I was very lucky that my older brother Pete was and is a jazz musician, and so when I first picked up the bass, which would be when I was maybe 10 years old, I was listening to his albums because he could afford to buy albums, and I was very influenced by Oscar Pettiford, the great bass player
Sure.
of that time. I'm talking about in the 50s, way back, and Julius Watkins and Charlie Rouse, the kind of ensemble that made many records under different names with the name of each of them. So I grew up listening to those, not thinking I love that, I want to do that, but being influenced. And it wasn't long after that I joined what we called a combo in those days. And I wouldn't say I was playing jazz. I didn't even know what style it was, but I began at a young age the process of being thrown in a room with other guys, and then you form a band, and you're sort of a family in a way. And some guys are at that level in it as well. Some players are better than others, and hopefully you learn from the really good ones, and hopefully you play well enough that they'll stick around with you and not just kind of buzz off to a different band. And so I started that, yes, very early. And I didn't always play in bands. I played early in bands, and then I went off into classical music very heavily until I was 20 or so, and then I got back into jazz at that
I wanted
age.
to ask you about. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I just did an interview. It's very low end day because I just did an interview with Rick Laird before you, and
Rick,
yeah,
yes.
and he was talking about at Berkeley at the time when he got there. It was not the Schillinger House anymore, but it was like basically the bass instructor there was a classical bass player, and he learned everything with the bow because in order to really have the rudiments or to be able to play complex fingerings of jazz music, that foundation needed to come from the foundations of classical music, and so he only learned with the bow. And he had not started playing the Fender bass yet or the electric bass yet.
Yeah, yeah.
And was it something similar for you with classical music where you were bowing a lot? And if so, how did that help you move on in expanding the vernacular of musical vocabulary for you?
Well, I learned a classical technique, I guess you would say, with the French bow. There's the French bow and the German bow. Doesn't matter looking back at it. And I was way into it, and I got in an orchestra, the Rochester Philharmonic. And I'm very lucky that at a young age to play jazz and rock. But I would say, of course, that technique, any technique, having the proper, there isn't one, I don't believe there's one proper technique, but having a good foundation of how you go about playing helps a lot. I mean, now that I play the Fender bass, and now that guys play way faster than they did in those days, in a way I'm held back a little bit by my technical training, because the way Rick would have learned and the way I learned, you do not use the how should I put it, the third finger of your left hand, the one next to the pinky. You just don't use it because the upright basses, they're stretched far enough apart that you can't stretch your fingers unless they're very big fingers. So you'll learn this technique without that finger. And now that I'm trying to learn King Crimson parts by Robert Fripp with his tremendous technique, and they involve using that finger. And boy, it's like I'm a beginner when it comes to using that finger. So in a way, it's ironic that I've reached a point where my early training is holding me back a little bit. But I can't say that without pointing out that the whole experience and now I shudder to add up the years I've been doing this, has been challenging the whole way and continues to be challenging. And that's partly why it's so special. I'm not the kind of guy that wants to just get out there and know, well, what I do is great and I'm going to, here it is, I'm going to do it. I just happen not to be that kind of guy. I like the pushing myself to try to do things I'm not so great at and learn from the other players who are better than me. So, yeah, I'm practicing with that other finger a little bit.
and let me ask you, just
as my journey goes.
As a rogue journalist and a patron and a purveyor of spiritual, vibrational, cathartic music, I mean, is that use of the finger with the King Crimson just based on style, like it's a progressive rock chord changes versus American Songbook, or I mean, what explain why?
Okay, I picked Robert just because that's the piece that.
Yeah, but it also is it's a good genre to pick. Yeah.
Yes, but it's any guitar player. All guitar players use that finger that I'm not using, and most bass players, just about all of them, use that finger.
Really?
It's only.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't speak for everybody, but it's. I could say us old guys, or just I'll only speak for myself.
No, it's my elders. The elders do. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was taught a technique which doesn't use that finger, and everybody uses it. And if I'm asked to double a part that's very fast, and change the strings by utilizing that finger, I better get my butt in the practice room and learn how to use it. I'm enjoying this subject. It's kind of funny.
No, you did. I mean, you're welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. No, okay, I'm going to go on a limb here. You're obviously a little bit younger than Israel's, but I also just interviewed this incredibly mercurial, I don't know what the right word is, Andy Pratt, who was...
funny.
What's that?
Funny guy.
I mean, dude, a real trip, man. Like, I mean, we were really... and he doesn't say a lot, but, there's a connection to some kind of connection to the divine there. But I'm curious about whether you had the audacity at 15 or 16 before you went to Eastman to travel over into Harvard Square to play at, it was called Club Autumn 47, or then it was just called the Club 47. At one time, there was a there were jazz trios over there. Did you go over and gig at all before you went to Eastman?
No, I didn't. I could say that I didn't really play jazz at all, and I was too young to get in those clubs. And there was Paul's Mall and
the Jazz Workshop. That's.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed in there, and I wasn't I was really buried in classical music. It was tremendous luck that I was at the Eastman School when Steve Gadd went there, both studying classical, but he had no bass player to do gigs with at night. He had lots of gigs. And
you were going to the Pithod Club.
Yes,
dude, I've been waiting a long time to talk to you, man. I talked to, just by chance, it was like, Ron Carter was like, I got free bebop lessons from Tommy Flanagan when I was at Eastman. So you fell in love with jazz because of can you talk about, like Steve's like, hey man, I got this gig at the Pithod. Like, can you just talk about how magical that was when you got hip to melodic invention?
Yeah. Yes, it was very special and very challenging because as immersed as I was in classical, a good way to put it is that Steve sort of wordlessly mentored me about how to play jazz. We just do the gigs, and they weren't all heavy jazz, but whatever it is, my time was the time of a classical player, which is, to be technical, to put the beat right smack in the middle of the beat, which is not where you want it to be in most jazz. It wants to be ahead of the beat, and I just didn't even know that, not to mention unable to do it. And Steve was very patient with me, and gradually I got the feel of it. And he introduced me, because of we were a duo, we got to play with Chuck Mangione and Gap Mangione, and regularly, so like 6 hours a night I was playing with Steve every night, and that alone, regardless of the venue.
I think it's so important. We live in such a verbose time, and it's a dangerous time with a lot of deception, and everything hangs on words, and so many of the masters, the original masters of music, communicated non-verbally. I mean, Thelonious would get up and dance around the bandstand while his guys were giving solos. Or Jamal might pick up, if he was fusing two tunes together, he'd hold up one finger and then two fingers. Or, how did Steve help you to push you to play? Well, I guess everybody has their own, whether they play on the beat, in front or behind, but you said that jazz is more driving in front. How did he work with you as a rhythm mate to get you into a zone where you're like, okay, now that I know where that pocket is now?
Yeah, very good question. I don't remember this was a while ago now, so
yeah, we're stretching out a little bit. Yeah, in
detail, but like I said, it was mostly wordlessly. It was musically because we were listening to each other, and I can't really think of examples, but there's ways you can send a signal to someone in the band. I would say, having played in many genres, that the jazz players, it's a well-known thing among jazz players, that jazz players have big ears, what we call the expression.
No, dude, I love big ears, man. I love that.
Yeah, they hear what's going on, and they hear what the other people are doing. And so, in my opinion, a little bit more than in general than players in other genres, in other types of music. And so, there's just ways for a drummer to let a bass player know he's dragging. It's not dragging, or he's playing right smack on the beat, and it's not acceptable. It's like, come on, get in this groove. I don't know the words, but the words weren't spoken anyway, and all kinds of jokes are passed around in jazz. You know this. And
don't. It's I don't want it to be an inside baseball club. Are you talking about like nonverbal jokes, like, or they'll just throw the time off? Yeah.
I'm saying musical jokes and musical references. So someone will just quote, let's say, a Coltrane lick riff, and the other guys will either nod or not. They'll know it, and the guy knows that they know it, or he'll do a variation of it. And so there's a lot of. I think people go to jazz clubs and they don't just listen; they sense and they kind of get a front seat, a virtual front seat at this amazing communication that's going on at a very high level, wordless level, among the musicians in their music. And that's a thing that jazz has, in my opinion, more than other styles of music. And it's a very precious thing. And it involves improvising, of course. It wouldn't work if the structure was all set and you couldn't play your own notes. And that's partly why jazz is right there, giving us the opportunity to play a different part every night, and completely different part.
Well, I'm going to ask you something, just go out on a limb here, but with Gad, as with Buddy Rich and so many other cats, I mean, Steve was a tap dancer, you played tuba, and so you recognized how to make the notes round, which is very important in jazz, and Steve essentially was dancing on the kit. I mean, you guys, it was still a form of dance music. Even stuff that I would consider you guys increasers of musical vocabulary, whether you knew it or not. But to me, I am not sure as I think we've become so visual as a society that we've been trained to sit and stare at somebody's facility or somebody wanking it up there, instead of letting the body dance. And I know that you guys, you were probably playing as if it was the matter of life and death, but there was a dancing quality to it because of your backgrounds. And I'd like you to just, play off of that and tell me if there's any credibility between learning how to make the notes round and Steve's tap dancing, and if that made you an effective rhythm unit.
Well, you're a very good journalist, and you see the ways to get inside the music and describe it with words, which is great. I am just
no, you nailed it. And what I'm saying is, you don't even listen. Go where your mind takes you. Maybe you haven't talked about this before or thought about it, but it's really important that just it's a stream of consciousness. So just let it go.
Well, I'm trying to. I, however, am just playing the music and not really. I can look back at it and try and figure out ways to describe it and what my bass sound is like. But the making of the music takes place in a part of my brain that's not really attached to the verbal part and not attached to the part that's analytical. So I
I
just
love
kind
it. So
of,
you
I'm
are in a
inside.
zone, and then there's no analysis.
Well, yeah, most of I think I can speak for most players who, like me, not all of them, but most of them are that way. You can kind of go to a place that's different than the journalist can see, and it's wonderful. It's refreshing and special hearing what other people say about it, because it's in my case I just don't don't know that. It is true that Steve was a tap dancer, and one could describe his approach. And that would be correct. It's really remarkable to think of it that way. And Buddy, else, yes, I think I've heard that he was also a dancer. Uh, yeah, and me, as for trying to form the sound, and it was fun playing tuba. I can't play it anymore because I have a mustache, which lets the air leak out of the damn
Oh,
mouth.
dude, maybe at some point shave get the tuba. But we need that. The
Yeah.
tuba. Well, anyway, I mean, I respect the in the moment sort of. I don't know what the right word is. It's almost like just some sort of psychic state of playing. But we have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I don't expect you to know who it is, but pay attention to the content. Maybe we can dig a little bit deeper into the zeitgeist of Levin. So here we go.
Spiritual thing is basically when you're playing, and it's just not bebop. This is other music too, but bebop in jazz is probably that's the high end of what we do as jazz musicians. But just the spirituality comes from it's like something. Now this may sound abstract, but it's something that Wayne Shorter said to me one time. He said that the only way you can really, really, really play is that you have to go to the store and buy some milk for your grandmother. And when he said that to me and the drummer Omar Hakim, now he had a few drinks, a few old drinks.
Right.
I said, wow. But a couple days later, it hit me, because it's like to come, if you have one of those kind of families, you go to see your grandmother, she says, go to the store and get me some milk, and you go there, there's a love, there's a love for something other than just what you're looking at. It's like your own personal love, which could come from God, which could come from the force of life. It could be whatever it is that you think makes you tick. Mm-hmm. That if you tap into that, whatever that is, it's not a material. It's not the instrument. It's not the notes. It's the life force. And that is very, when you operate on that band, that's or on that frequency in life, that is very spiritual.
Tony Levin, you want to take a gander at who that is?
No idea.
That was my interview from September 2014 with Stanley Clark. And, I am not a professional musician. I am a journalist, but I have played drums with my surrogate uncles, and I feel the four-way coordination, and I start to leave the thinking mind and enter the spirit mind. And he's talking about playing music, Wayne Shorter talking about playing music, the only way to really play authentically and I think he said it's not just bebop. It could be folk, it could be rock, it could be whatever, but if it's honest, in the moment interpretation, then the essence is like it's going to the store to get your grandma some milk. There's some duty and love beyond this world. It's the frequency that I've been operating on, and it's the reason I found my voice. You guys have given that to me. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at is, can you relate to a time in your career, even early on when you were no one, Radio Registry was calling you, or maybe you were on a live tour on the bandstand, ultimately when you recognized that in order to, I'm not talking about a studio gig or a formula trip, I'm talking about your own music or a band that was playing improvisationally, you never played the same song the same way once, when you recognized that the only way to play was like going to the store to get your grandma some milk.
Uh, it's good stuff you're talking about. I
Thank
think
you, man. Thank you, brother.
um, I want to mention a band I toured with a couple times with Alan Holdsworth, Terry Bozzio, Pat Mastelotto on drums, and myself, a quartet, where were the plan was to not have any plan at all, not even sound check at the same time.
I love
So
it.
it was totally improvised, and it was fun. It was very challenging, especially for me after a few nights, after like 5 nights when, to tell you the truth, I had played every musical idea I ever dreamed of a couple times. And I'm trying to keep up at the level of these great creators. Uh, um, so that was, a, a, I'm tempted to say a mind-opening tour, but I had played in that style with other players a little bit, not that much as being on tour with it. And I think of note is that I felt it takes the audience to a different place. The audiences weren't always happy with us. They kind of wanted, especially Alan Holdsworth, to play some of his famous riffs and famous things that they had heard that made them love his playing. And he was listening a lot, and he was just in the moment and playing where his spirit took him, as we all were. But I felt like, in a way, we were on a journey every night with the audience, because the audience, even though they're not making noise, they have some effect on the music we play. It is partly why it's different every night, and partly some makes one concert stand out as the best of your life or the best of a tour when you're playing the same notes every night or something. And still, as I've had interactions with fans, especially of King Crimson, I found that we in the band agree with them that out of all the hundreds of concerts, some nights just stood out as magically more special, and none of us knows why. Maybe some poet could describe why. I can't. But
I dig. I mean, like, even like, but at the Pithod, I mean, when I interviewed Stevie, it was heavy. I mean, Groove Holmes, they drive in with a Hearst, or Shirley Scott, or, I mean, they pull the B3 out of there. I mean, it was already sanctified. And I mean, I know you were into classical music, but, I mean, and you hear people like Reggie Workman, they say, like, playing jazz, that word is so perverted. If the two of us walked up and down the street and asked 15 people what their definition of the word jazz is, we get 15 different definitions. In my mind, it can be the American songbook, but it's leaving the head of the tune and maybe losing the downbeat and maybe, accentuating the time, changing the time, having dynamics, tension and release, and pulse, and ultimately creating discarga for the audience. And I know that that's what you were doing back in the day. And that's what I want my generation. I'm 42. My generation is so hung up on playing parts, playing them perfectly, comping parts. It's different than the individuality of listening to Pete LaRocca or Mickey Roker or Tony Williams or Max Roach. Or Steve Gadd. You know exactly who's playing, just like if it's Herb Bushler or Tony Levin or Chuck Rainey. So it was modeled to have your own individual sound when you were coming up. And now, due to a saturation and a deluge of information, visual information, people are comping. And so I just, to me, I understand you come in, it's a studio date, you got your charts, you got to play what you play. But aside from being exhausted from trying to figure out other chords that you played everything in your vocabulary after 3 nights with Bozzio, what was when you walked away from it, what was something what was gratifying about that experience?
The words fail me. I mean, to play.
I dig. Okay, you take a break. I'm hitting you with a lot.
Those who know the playing of Alan Holdsworth and Terry Bozzio and Pat Mastelotto, especially if they're musicians, they would correctly envy me for having been the fourth guy on the stage. It was magical every night, even our bad sets. I say a set because we would just start playing, and then an hour or so later we'd stop playing. But even our worst ones were magical and very special. So just on the musical front, without bringing it to a different analysis, just on the musical front, it was tremendously special.
I want to read you this to you because we're just going to go deep. I mean, your memory is, I'm stretching you way back here. This is from an interview I did with Gap Mangione, and he said,
Good friend of mine.
I love him. He said, I had seen Cannonball Adderley play prior to meeting him. It was the night before New Year's Eve a long time ago, and a girlfriend and I were out that evening because we were told that there was some good jazz to be heard at some place south of Geneva. Geneva is a comparatively small town outside of Rochester, and when you get south of Geneva, it's pretty much all farms. Through some inquiry, we happened upon a big barn that had been converted into a bar and restaurant. We walked in, it was a long bar with a lot of people. In the back, there was a smaller room with music coming out of there, and I couldn't believe it. I walked in, and there's Paul Chambers, Sonny Clark, Philly Joe Jones, and Cannonball playing this gig. Apparently, it was some payback for an obligation that Philly Joe owed to the bar owner. It was Miles's band without Miles. Those guys never played without an internal burn. They had it on all the time, and they were having it on that night. There was never a casual engagement for these people. He goes on to say he calls people up. It turns out a number of years later when I asked Nat Adderley about why Cannon decided to, Cannon helped him and brother Chuck get their first album together. And it's, did you know that bar and restaurant in that barn south of Geneva?
No, I didn't. No.
It's that internal burn. It's the urgency of the music of that time. For whatever reason they were playing it. Just in your playing, did you consider yourself like, is there a fine line for you between craftsmanship and musicianship? And, I remember interviewing Louis Hayes, and until he joined Oscar Peterson, nobody ever told him what to play. Nobody ever told him how to play. It would be an insult to him. And when he got with Oscar, there were more parts and things that Oscar was uptight about, and it was really a struggle for him. So I just want to know if you've always approached music, especially live, with a sense of urgency or burn, the way that Leroy Vinegar, Philly Joe, Garrison, Coltrane. I mean, to me, those guys were praying. It was like prayer music, and you guys were right there with them. And I know that Gad would talk about, or Bushler talked about, going down to East Slum at the time in New York, and it was like $43 a month to live in an apartment. But around the block, you'd have musicians with their instruments just around the block playing, trying to sit cut sessions. And I know you were part of it, and that I just was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, if you can remember back to that time, that urgency and that desire and the understanding that this was the only thing, that music chose you, Tony. That's basically, when did you recognize that the music had chose you?
Well, very interesting. And Gap, my good friend Gap, and Chuck and Steve were more students of jazz and followed all the great players much more than I ever had, just by coincidence. But I really respect that, and I learned a lot from all of them, of course, secondhand. And I really wouldn't put myself into conversation with those jazz greats that you mentioned. But when I was a kid, I wanted to play music, and then I kind of, at a young age, decided I wanted to play bass. I still don't, it's an interesting thing that I still don't know why. I asked my parents when they were alive and when they were pretty elderly, I said, did I ever say why I chose the bass? And they said, in fact, you just said you liked the bass. And it sounds like a boring subject, but considering I was 9 or 10 years old, and I'm now 74, and I still just like playing the bass. I just like playing good music. If it's the genre almost doesn't matter. If it's not good music and not so good, then I'm an unhappy guy. I'm an unhappy puppy. But if it's good music, and if it's with good players, I'm just happy doing that. And I'm not a shallow guy, but in that one way, it's remarkable to me that I haven't changed a bit since I was 10 years old. I'm still looking for a combo to play in, and if there's some guys who are really special and kind of have raised their excellence to a state beyond the others in the band, and I'm thrilled to be around that, and hope I can fit in, hope I can keep up, and thrilled to have some of it rub off on me in a learning way, kind of you up your game when you play with better players.
Oh, absolutely. No, I dig. I got another Name That Voice for you, and I think this is really going to bring a smile to your face. So take a listen to this, and we'll come back.
It's just that he was extremely talented, and he could play that instrument like no one else could. No one. I can't remember anyone ever playing with that ferociousness that I can come up with. And it was like, Cab. I mean, and I think, I wouldn't just say that I would not change that. That's not really Black. It was just Pepper Adams,
Right.
But he always got, I don't know, he always wound up playing with Black guys because it just sort of fit. It just fit with their, with what they were doing.
What were they doing? I mean, that's the whole point of it, is that you could talk about, West Coast bop, that was Chet Baker. Those guys could burn. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is the idea of, this transcending, the music transcends the band, okay? Because the sequencing of the ideas, like you said, is ferocious. When Coltrane was doing his modal period, again, I'm a non-musician, but I'm just trying to get to this idea of the Black ethos of just burning. It's just burning music. I mean, that's something that, in my mind, you cannot be taught that. That's when you just sort of let go, listen, let your ego go. But I really want you to talk about it, because I was amazed that you were marinating in this bastion here.
Uh-huh. Well, it just was the way it was. I don't know. I really don't know why it was the way it was. It's just that it seemed to me that there was a difference in the way Black people approached the music, and I'll give you like a technical explanation.
That'd be great, yeah.
Well, we mostly know that jazz came out of the early church blues and what have you. It basically came from Africa. When you look at early African music, I would say 95% of it was what we call 6/8 or 12/8.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a lilting way about it, but it was like 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. Whereas like common American music was in 4/4 or 3/4, so that's 1 2 3 4. Now you can fit the 12/8 into the 4/4,
right?
By going 1 2 3 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3, like that. But the difference is that you have the difference between triplets, which is 3 notes in the space of 2, or you have 8 notes and 16 notes. So it's the difference like this, like da 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 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, like that, or 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. So, all right. So now take a song, but like Count Basie.
All right, I'm not gonna. Do you want to take a guess at who that is?
No, I don't. No.
That is one of your oldest compadres, Don Preston.
Really? Wow.
And I interviewed Don January of 2016, and I don't know if you knew this, but he would go to the West End Cafe in Detroit and Milt Jackson's brother Ollie was on bass. They'd be playing 4 sets, and then Ollie would get tired, and he let Don play bass. Don was playing bass with Elvin Jones in Detroit. And so we went on this whole riff about polyrhythmic, and that's what he was. And I'm not interested in that. What I am interested in is the attack of the green slime beast. And I want to know, I mean, because Preston, I've been to Preston's house, and I don't know if you haven't lost contact with him. I have his number if you want. I mean, I don't know if you're still, I mean, the guy is just a mensch.
I'm in contact with him.
Yeah, I love him. I love this cat. And I'm like, when I saw your thing, and I'm like, oh my God, first of all, I'm sorry, I'm just riffing off the cuff. I didn't realize you played on Andy Pratt's Resolution album. That's a whole other story. Okay, Aha. Talk about, how did it, were you in a loft, a scene? How did that come to be?
Well, I had, not long after I had moved to New York and didn't have any work or options, I was very lucky to fall in with Don. He's such a creative, inventive, creative guy. And he was at that time hanging out with some other ex-members of the Mothers of Invention, or former members of the Mothers, and we decided to form a band. And it was one of those bands that rehearsed a lot and never really went anywhere. We did a few, maybe 2 gigs, 3. Don's memory might be better than mine, but it was very avant-garde rock, jazz-influenced rock, and there was a singer, Ray Collins, and original material. It's just the luck of the draw, whether bands are successful or not. We did have, in those days, record companies would sometimes approach a band that was rehearsing, and indeed we were approached, but we ended up breaking up before we put out a record. Aha, the Attack of the Green Slime Beast was the name of the band, and my most memorable...
You are making this sound so perfunctory.
Most memorable...
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, please, continue.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, was it, when you say free, was it like, because, I mean, you're right, Preston is such a beautiful cat and so creative. Was it more like, when you say free, was that your first experience playing free music, and how did you keep some kind of structure as the bass player within formless music?
Well, that music wasn't all free. It was written. There were improv sections, and there were very loose improv sections. I seem to remember at one time the drummer, Denny Sywell, actually throwing his cymbals around the stage while Don Preston confronted the audience, in his words, by sitting cross-legged at the front of the stage and glaring at them with gunpowder burning in different colors under his at his knees.
So you just made my weekend. By the way, that is the greatest. Denny Sywell is a good friend. I cannot believe you're. I cannot believe.
I can't tell. Go away, or am I still on?
No, you're here. No, please. I'm sorry. You were playing like some.
So I was telling a story of a typical one of the 2 nights, maybe 3 nights that we played, where Don was confronting the audience and Denny throwing his cymbals, and Meredith Monk's dance troupe had joined us to do improv dance around the stage, wearing very little clothing with their bodies painted red. And one of those out-of-work actors in Meredith's dance troupe was a guy named Danny DeVito. And by the way, the night that I vividly remember Don confronting the audience, there were only 2 people in the audience. It was in Philly in a theater, and one of them got up and walked out. Of course, he was afraid, leaving one guy. By the way, Don was projecting film not onto himself, but onto the audience in their eyes.
Okay. What's the word you're using? He confronted the audience. He was upset with the. What kind of word were you using exactly?
It was theater. He was
engaging them. Okay.
You guys play, and I'll confront the audience.
And Sywell was frisbeeing cymbals around or crack?
Correct.
What was he really?
That's correct. Yeah.
Dude, Levin, this is the greatest story I've ever heard in my life. Dude. I mean, it's unbelievable, man. Yeah. So explain in that. So based on, your bandstand rigor and your Eastman education, like Don, I mean, how did you know what your role was amidst this vaudevillian free music? I don't even know what it was. I mean, this is insane.
My memory's not good enough to know how much I had played loose music without structure at that time, but I had undoubtedly done it some. So I wasn't like, oh my God, how do I do this? And like any musical situation, I was just trying to do it. I was trying to join it and do what's best for the music with my bass or without my bass, as the case may be.
So actually leaving space and creating music through space.
Well, for sure. I don't remember what I played that night on that bandstand, but leaving space and listening and doing what's best for the music is a very, very important part of how I formulate my bass approach for any band, any kind of music.
I just cannot believe Aha and the Attack of the Green Slime Beast. I mean, this was all original music, and would you, like, I hate categories, but would it be, how would you, like, would you consider it progressive rock or jazz or improv or anything?
Well, like I had said, there was a singer and there were lyrics, and I think at the beginning, Ray Collins and Don Preston were writing all the material, the two of them. But actually, by the time, and Billy Mundy was the drummer at that time.
Dude, he was a mother's cat. Yeah, he was a Zappa drummer.
Yes, and Billy was the singer with Zappa. Yeah.
With Rhinoceros, yeah, that's right.
Oh, sorry, and Ray, I'm sorry, Ray Collins was the singer.
Ray Collins.
Yes, Rhinoceros, you're correct. But by the time Danny was in the band, I guess they were changing personnel a little, and I think that Ray wasn't singing with the band at that time. This is a long time ago, so it's stretching my memory to get all the details right. You'll have to ask Don to fill in the spaces.
Dude, Don, I just am so. I mean, when you we lost the late great. I mean, Steve Grossman last week, and there were these burgeoning scenes. Liebman had a loft, and Howie Wyatt, Brecker, Lenny White, Dave Holland, Chick Corea. They were all playing experimental music. I think Jan Hammer and Perla had one under the bridge, Williamsburg Bridge. And, this Preston band fits right. In the sense that it was a band that was put together. I mean, some people might call it a garage band of really accomplished musicians, but it was like, Brecker said that he made his rent. He lived in a brownstone apartment for like $450 a month. And in 1 week of studio work, he made his rent. And so he could get ahead. And can you talk about how good a feeling I mean, again, you play, I look at your portfolio now, you're playing with a lot of acts that command big stadiums, lots of people. They're already known brands, name brands, and so it provides for a livelihood. But at the time of when you were pretty much still just finding your footing, the idea of being able to get ahead as a professional musician, because, Tony, I don't need to tell you this, but my peers and younger, it's never been easy. But musicians are now part of the working poor. And there was a time in our country when the profession of a musician was seen as a viable profession. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how exciting it was that you had this dream, for whatever reason you dug the bass, and then the fact that you moved to New York and you start picking up jingles and commercials and dates and all sorts of different gigs, and you're actually making a living doing what you love. Can you talk about that feeling that you had?
Well, it's an interesting subject, the struggle and the challenge for musicians of making a living versus playing music, because the music industry, since I've been in it, has always had the fact because before I came to New York, I was struggling when I came to New York. I had no work, and when I was in Aha, the Attack of the Green Slime Beast, and rehearsed for 9 months and did 2 gigs, and then broke up. That stuff doesn't lead to paying your rent.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. I was staying with friends, as one does, But I had been, before that, I was in an orchestra, so I was getting a salary. So there are ways. And I kind of my journey is I fell into studio work, like you said, jingles and album tracks of different sorts, which is a craft. It's not really an art playing on those things. It's a craft, and I have plenty of respect for it. It was never, you mentioned my dream. My dream was to play. I didn't have it. I wouldn't put it in the terms of a dream. I wanted to play the bass and play good music. So yes, I was playing jingles to pay the rent, and that was fine. And I could be in bands like White Elephant and How the Attack of the Green Slime Beast, and I became, you could say, successful. I ended up in the 70s and 80s doing a lot of studio work, and I didn't dislike it, but it was not. It was playing live that I knew was really what I loved to do. And I said in the 80s, actually it was mostly in the 70s, because in 76, I by chance, I played on Peter Gabriel's first album, and he asked me to go on the road with him. And in those days, a busy studio player didn't go on the road, especially for an extended time, because people would stop calling you, and it wasn't that they disliked you, but they would find somebody else who could adequately, just as well, do the job. And you'd kind of go to the bottom of everybody's list. So when you'd come back, you'd be out of work for a long time, if not forever. However, Peter Gabriel, he wasn't as famous then, but it was something really special. And it wasn't long after being out on the road with Peter that my heart knew that this is what I really love to do, is play live. And ever since then, I've done studio work or album work when I can, when I'm not on the road. But most of my time, very fortunately, not this year, but most of my time usually spent on the road doing the live concerts, which is what I most love to do. And I appreciate more and more as I'm older how lucky I've been to do so much of it.
Do you, someone like yourself, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but, I'm assuming that, that you're financially doing okay and, you're not starving to death and I wonder if you could talk to cats out there, being a pretty grounded guy. I mean, the bass player, one of your roles is to just lock the groove. And my peers and younger, the only way you can make money now, there is no radio registry. There's no jingle scene. There's no studio scene. So those dates are gone. The publishing, you don't get the days of going off to Woodstock like Bob Dylan or Joni Mitchell and writing great songs and then selling 1 million albums and going on tour and writing it off as a loss. Those you can't sell records. You get downloads now. You get 14,000 downloads. You make like 18 cents or something. So that's gone. The only way you make money now in modern time music is by road dogging it, and some people do it in a very high-class way, and people like Lee Sklar and Stephen Ferroni and Tony Levin, people that, that they've worked their ass off and they're working with high-profile gigs. But most of these cats, they're barely getting by. And can you talk, even though it's unprecedented, about some inspiration for my generation and younger, who, for people that have literally had their livelihood like yourself. I mean, maybe you feel useless a few days a week because you're not working, right? But I already know the mental toll that it's taken on musicians that I'm close with. Some of them have taken their own lives because they no longer have any opportunity to work. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about what would you say to younger generation of musicians about looking towards the light in a time when, computer jobs remain, teaching jobs remain, things are you can adapt, but the idea of making money and making a living as a musician, as a road dog, is not here. And what would be, not your advice, what would be an inspirational thing? Because they can do Zoom, they can do lesson, but the idea of playing communal, spiritual, live music it's so tragic what's happening, and you're not an oracle, and you're not a soothsayer, but I just want to know if there was a bunch of cats and you were talking to them, what you would say to them about staying inspired and staying plugged in.
Well, you put it right when you said I'm not an expert. I'm like them. After I finish a track today, I don't know if I'll have any work the rest of my life because I'm a freelance musician. It's always been that way, but now it's even harder, of course, because there's no live gigs this year. And we'll see about next year. I have no inside information. I think we're lucky to have I always keep reminding myself that I'm lucky to have the chance to make music when I do have the chance, because that's pretty darn special. And to actually be able to scratch out a living from playing music is pretty darn special, and seems, in my experience, it seems like the only people who can stay with it are the ones who have no choice. So that's what they're going to do. It's that or nothing, and they stay with it and hopefully eke out something sooner or later. And it takes some luck. I wish I had answers.
No, I don't think it's about it. Maybe the question is
what will happen in the future. I don't have any of that. But I really do appreciate, in my kind of okay house here in near Woodstock, how lucky I am, and I appreciate how many musicians are not so lucky, and it's a rough time. And let me add, it's a bit even rougher time for the technical crew.
Thank you for saying that, by the way. The roadies and the stage crew, I agree, totally.
Sometimes it's a big group, like with King Crimson, there's 12 of them. And with Peter Gabriel, there's probably 20 of them. And with a small group like my Stickman or Levin Brothers, there'll be one guy who drives the van with the sound. But those guys are totally without work, and they don't even have the practice room at home to go in alone and make their music, or the chance to get together on Zoom with somebody else and try to make music. All of them try to help out in what ways I can, but as for advice to them, no, hang in there, I guess, and appreciate when you do appreciate all the more when you get to jam next May or next July or
Right.
next February. Appreciate how lucky we are who can get to share that wonderful magic that happens when we make music together.
Can you talk about it? Can you just?
Hey, Jake, I got to. Having said that, I got to go. It's been an hour.
Oh, well, can we do part 2?
Oh, sure.
Okay, great, because we got more to do. I'm sorry. You're very good. You're right on the mark. I told you 50 minutes. So, yeah, Tony, it was an honor, man. I'll email you and we'll set up a time.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Jake. And I appreciate it. And I like hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, my man. Thank you for answering the best you could.
Okay.
Later
Take
on.
care. Be well.
Yeah, peace. Great day on the Jake Feinberg Show, and we will see you tomorrow.